So I'm in one of my favourite woodlands in the whole of the UK, and as you can see, it's full of these incredible kind of ancient oaks. They're almost like kind of wizard-like Harry Potter-y type trees. Some of these are over 750 years old. They're just incredible things. Let's go and have a look at one. And some of them, if you can have a look at this one, you can see that you can climb right up inside this. You can get a fully grown man up there. I can get up there, and the brilliant thing about this particular tree is that there's a hole that's about halfway up that you can stick your head out, which is pretty fun. The sad thing is our ancient oaks are seriously badly threatened as of the last 10 or 15 years. The giveaway here is this little yellow tag that you can see. The good news is that anyone can get involved in becoming the saviours and guardians of our wonderful oak trees. It's very simple. All it requires is reporting a little bit of data. Sounds kind of boring, but in fact it's really important, what they call citizen science. It takes 30 seconds, it's quite fun, and in doing so you can become the saviour of our wonderful ancient oaks. So what is this problem and what can you do about it? That's what this video is going to explore. So how do you spot OPM moth? Well, first of all, the reason why I have changed location and are now, 20 foot off the ground, I'd say. Took a bit of an effort to get up here, but lovely view. I think it was worth it. I'm sat in one of these great big ancient oaks, or standing even. Anyway, so what you're looking for is, well, first of all, it's the OPM caterpillar, not the moth. That's really the dangerous thing here. It's really the problem. So the moth itself doesn't look anything like these beautiful peacock butterflies I was taking some footage of earlier. Sadly, nothing like that. Nothing as exciting as that. It's just a kind of dull brown, innocuous moth. Who cares? It's the caterpillars that are the problem. So when you're walking along and you have a look at an oak tree, what you want to be looking for is on the trunk or a big bough or limb like this of a tree, or sometimes even under the little sort of small branches, even just sort of nestled, say, in that little gap there. What you'll sometimes get is these kind of big, I'd say size of like a softball or something, or a tennis ball, big silky nests. They look a little bit like cobwebs, all wound round really tightly into this big kind of ball. And it's actually a very beautiful thing until you look a bit carefully into it, because they're slightly transparent. Look into it and you see this kind of like pretty horrific looking mass of writhing caterpillars, and they're often these little black caterpillars. Well, not that little, they're about that sort of size, but they have these huge great big white spines that stick out in quite an aggressive looking pattern all over them. So when you see them you think, crikey, that is pretty dangerous. I would have thought, don't want to go anywhere near it, certainly. And that's the problem, and that's how you look for them. You just simply look, often quite high off the ground, but sometimes they don't have to be that high. Big silky ball of like a nest of caterpillars, either on the tree like that or under the little branches like that, just sort of hanging down. That's how to spot them. You'll notice I've moved from up there where I was standing earlier. Got bored of standing around up there. Now I am sitting in the heart of this ancient oak tree, a little bit lower now, about 10-15 foot off the ground. Why are they really dangerous to humans? Well, pretty simple really. It's those little spines, of course, on the caterpillars. So those little spines that stick out, if you get them on your skin, obviously I haven't put any on my skin now because that would be a bad idea, it will leave your skin with like quite a bad rash. So you do actually see occasionally some photos of people that have been really badly affected by this, and they're kind of covered head to toe, if it's that bad, in a kind of really horrible blotchy red sort of blistering rash. It's really horrible actually. So they can be really dangerous in that way. The other thing, which is probably more dangerous really, if someone has severe asthma or even mild asthma, the little hairs and spines will hang around in the air for not just a couple of weeks or months for when the caterpillars are alive, but when they're gone, even then, those little sort of hairs will float around in the air. So when people breathe them in, if they've got a bad asthma, it can trigger a seriously bad asthma attack. So yeah, they're nothing to be laughed at. It's a serious issue, and it can be. If you've got asthma, I would definitely watch out around trees, especially in this part of the country, oak trees, because you've got to watch out for those little spines. A couple of horses going by. So the name oak processionary moth is all tied into why they're so dangerous, actually, because obviously processionary is the part of the name that has sort of intrigue. And the best way to think about it is a little bit like, if you think of the Pope, there's a lot of noise from some parrots flying over, another invasive species, but that's another story for a different time. Imagine the Pope will lead a religious procession in any city of the world. He might lead it, he might go out with his cardinals, and he might be out ahead, and then the cardinals might be behind, all following him along, or he might be shoulder to shoulder with the cardinals and just walking along. But they quite often walk in this very specific way, almost like either single file or kind of a few abreast, and they'll just go along the place and walk around the city. That's a little bit like what the oak processionary moth does. So, at night, as I said earlier, we think of them as being in these little silvery little pouch ball things, nests that are hanging down off the branches. That's very true. And you think, well, they're up there, who cares? That's not going to make a difference to me. I'm going to be walking down there on the forest floor. It doesn't matter. But at night time, they will leave that nest and they will do one of these papal, pope-like processions, and they'll come out of the nest, sometimes in single file, sometimes a few abreast, come all the way down the limbs of the tree, all the way down, right down there. They'll crawl down there onto the forest floor, and then they'll go, and you can see there's lots of oak trees around here. They'll crawl up other oak trees and eat all the leaves of those oak trees as well. And then after they finish that, they'll then return and go back up into the nest at night, and then they'll kind of repeat the process over and over again. And that's why they are so dangerous in a way, because those little spines will rub off on the ground on the forest floor. So when you've come along for your Sunday afternoon picnic with your family or whatever, minding your own business, you do not necessarily want to be getting that on your skin, but untold areas of the forest floor could be covered in that, and that's why they're quite a hazard to human health. But it's also how they manage to go and decimate large areas of oak tree forest like this. The reason why these things are such a big menace to UK oak trees is very simply because they're an invasive species. They came from southern Europe originally, and if you look in southern Europe, they've got more predators that prey on the oak processionary moth, and they've got a bunch of other ecological factors that means the populations of the caterpillars and the moth never really get that out of hand, whilst here we just don't have those same conditions, those same predators that will keep the population in check. Because what they do, of course, as I was saying earlier, is they climb up other trees all around this whole area, and they'll go and eat the leaves. In southern Europe they wouldn't eat all of the leaves, so it's not quite so dangerous, but here they can seriously decimate some of these ancient oak trees that haven't got a lot of other defences, and when they eat a lot of the leaves, that then allows opportunistic other parasites and infections and problems to get in there, and it can cause the death of a tree, which is why they're so incredibly dangerous here, but less so where the moth originally comes from in the south of Europe and other places. Well, the good news is you can do a lot, and the whole country really relies on the public to take responsibility and to really be guardians of our oak trees, because ultimately the Forestry Commission, who looks after all this stuff and looks into researching and controlling oak processionary moth, just doesn't have the resources to constantly be going out and looking for this invasive species on all of the oak trees around the country. It's just impossible. So it really relies on citizen science. In other words, the general public going out there, being proper guardians of our oak trees, looking for those little silky football type nest things, especially in kind of May and June. And if you see them, if you're just in your local park or woodland or forest or wherever you happen to be, just keep an eye on your local oak trees. Have a look around, look low down, but also look up into the branches. Spend a little bit of time, even if it's just 30 seconds, just surveying the tree. If you see any of those telltale signs of OPM, then the simplest thing to do, and I'm just going to suggest Googling it, because there's a few different ways you can report, and the best thing to do is just type into Google report oak processionary moth, stick it in there, you'll have a bunch of different options come up. One of the best and easiest options is just to fill in a simple report form on the Forestry Commission website. Takes like 30 seconds. Another way you can do, there's also a phone number you can call. Those will probably change over time, so I'm also not going to list them here, but just Google it. Reporting oak processionary moth. Make the call, fill in the form, it'll take 30 seconds, and by doing so you're playing a huge part in protecting our oak trees and reporting, because otherwise we just don't have the data to keep control of this terrible pest. And we're surrounded here by oak trees that are 500 to 700 years old or more. They're ancient oaks, and ancient oaks are really just a stage in the life cycle of an oak. So they're just, when they get really old, they change from being those really tall, quite sort of slender, slightly more elegant looking oak trees to the older ancient oak trees, where you'll often get a much kind of broader, squatter look to them. They often look a bit short and a bit stubby, but much sort of wider branches. The trunk can be really wide as well, and of course, I'm just lifting up this little bag here, you can see down there's a hole. Quite often the centre of the tree will be hollowed out. That's an ancient oak, and we have more ancient oaks in this country than all of the rest of the countries in Europe combined. So let's look after them, let's be protecting of them, let's be the guardians of our wonderful ancient oaks. So next time you're out, have a look, be the guardian of your local oak trees, and I will see you next time.